overfishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. We got a special episode here. Wyatt Parcell, one of our employees and someone who has been on quite a few of these podcasts. You know, he lives in North Carolina. He does a lot of his fishing reports in North Carolina. And he's touched on the subject of some of the issues that North Carolinians, especially recreational fishermen in North Carolina, have been facing over the years with depleting fisheries and stocks and just things that don't make sense. Like, why are there gill nets in the state of North Carolina when Florida, where I am, and every other state has, for the most part, banned these things, and the shrimp trawling and just all these issues? And something always has kind of seemed fishy. This is my perspective. Someone it's kind of always seemed a little bit fishy about this. And then I saw the news here recently, and I'm just going to read the headline: CCA NC, that's North Carolina, and 86 citizens file lawsuit against the state for coastal fisheries mismanagement. And I read through what I can read here. I believe it's a pretty thick lawsuit of probably many decades, I'm guessing, years of just kind of mismanagement and perhaps some decisions that don't make sense to anyone who cares about our natural resources and our waterways. And so I got David Sneed on, and we're going to talk all about it. And I wrote down a few things prior, and it sounds like there's kind of three big issues that we're going to talk about with David. But first and foremost, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I'll go ahead and apologize up front for the scraggly No Shave November beard. But, it is that time of year.
Yes. Are you going to get a big, fat, ugly mustache too, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Once I get rid of this, I'll just let the whole thing just go down. Yeah.
Love it.
As long as my wife will put up with it. Yeah.
I understand. I've been there before. So David, talk about your background. What do you do with CCA? Have you lived in North Carolina years? I don't know the whole backstory.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in North Carolina. Been here all my life. Traveled around a lot of other places in the country, but can't imagine anywhere better to be if you like the outdoors and you like to hunt and fish like I do and be outside. We've got a wide variety of opportunity here. I was a member of CCA for years, even before I became the executive director. I was hired in 2014 to be the executive director. It just kind of came up in conversations with my local CCA chapter that there was an opening, and I had spent a lot of my professional career in the construction industry, and been through some ups and downs of the markets crashing and rebuilding, and had just turned 50, and when I was given the opportunity to work for CCA, I kind of looked at it as I spent the first 50 years of my life pretty much trying to make a living. I thought I'd spend the backside of the next 50 trying to make a difference. And so that's what kind of drew me to this is, I love to fish. I love to be outside. I want my kids to enjoy it and have a fishery for the future. I want my grandkids I want to take my grandkids fishing. I look forward to those days. And, unfortunately, a lot of times my children won't even go fishing with me anymore because they'll be like, Dad, you never catch anything, when we go. So what's the point? And so either I'm a really bad fisherman or the fishing or the fish aren't there. So we're working on both. But I've been here since 2014. I run the organization. I'm responsible for administration and operations, but I'm, the chief advocacy officer. I am a registered lobbyist. I spend a lot of time at the legislature and the executive branch trying to deal with fisheries issues and keeping an eye on legislation and regulations. And so it's a busy job, but it's a labor of love.
I heard one stat about weak fish, trout, It was something crazy, like 90% down over a certain amount of time in your state. Is that?
Yeah, weak fish, gray trout. I mean, people that grew up in eastern North Carolina did a lot of fishing for gray trout, particularly in the Pamlico Sound, and can tell you stories about just jigging for them and just catching coolers full. But we were looking at the stats when we were putting our complaint together, and one of the things that stood out was that the commercial landings for weak fish, or what we call gray trout, since 1997 have declined 98%.
98.
I mean, it's the chart. We start putting these charts together, and it's pretty ugly. It's going away, and if we don't do something about it, there's a bottom in sight.
And to be clear, it's not from water quality issues. This is from overfishing, for the most part.
For the most part, from overfishing, and a lot of the impact. The biggest issue that we see in our fisheries management is the continued use of destructive gear in North Carolina. One of the biggest impacts on gray trout is from the shrimp trawling that takes place in the Pamlico Sound. So these trawlers are operating in areas that should be designated as nursery areas. A lot of the areas are off limits, but the entire Pamlico Sound is really a nursery area for a lot of species. And the top three species, the Division of Marine Fisheries' own studies have identified as being caught in these shrimp trawl nets are spot, croaker, and weak fish. And we can look at, like I said, weak fish is 98% decline. I think, where are my numbers on that? So you've got spots declined 84% and croakers 91%. There's got to be a correlation. It's no denying that.
What happens in general when they get caught in the net? Are they at that point just dead? Are these shrimp trawlers selling the meat at that point, or like I don't even know what happens at that?
No, it's effectively dead or dying.
So just bycatch that just gets deposited and.
Yep, it's bycatched, and again, the division studies on bycatch have indicated that for every pound of shrimp that they're harvesting in these inshore waters, they're catching and killing 3.3 pounds of finfish.
Whoa!
So, and it's it's drug along and it gets in the tail bag, and it's either dead when it's dumped on the deck, or it lays on the deck, rotting in the sun as they cull the shrimp and throw out all the bycatch. And then they shovel it back overboard dead. And again, these studies are showing that there's hundreds of millions, and that's hundreds of millions of juvenile fish that are being killed every year in these shrimp trawls. And it's a huge impact. And if you don't think it's true, you can just watch the trawlers as they're going along, and you see the sharks swimming behind them, or the birds feeding behind them. It's like a buffet line. Yep. It's all there for them.
Man, one thing I thought was interesting and probably smart on your part was I read through the lawsuit, and you guys, because I think my first impression was, oh, this is going to be, suing the commercial fishermen. I don't even know if they were even listed. And I guess it makes sense because the commercial fishermen aren't breaking any laws, right? They assuming they paid for their license, they're doing everything correctly. They're just following the rules that have been put in place, right? So you guys are going after the big picture, right? That we're talking, I'm assuming many, many years of just mismanagement and probably some outdated laws. Talk about that. Like who is this lawsuit here with? It's a CCA NC and 86 citizens, and then who's it against?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. We want to make that clear from the very beginning that we didn't file this lawsuit against the commercial industry. They're not named in this suit at all. We're filed this law. The lawsuit's filed against the state of North Carolina. And as you mentioned, the commercial fishermen are just by and large, doing what the law allows them to do. And a problem is with, the regulations and the laws that we have in place. And everybody can see the statistics. They know what needs to be done. There's three main focuses of the lawsuit. We mentioned the destructive gear, continued use of, the loss of fish stocks in bycatch and shrimp trawling and gill net industry, the failure to timely end overfishing of specific stocks that we know are troubled, and then the use of or the continued allowance of unused commercial fishing licenses, what we call latent licenses. So the state has we feel like we have built a pretty good case and documented and can build a case that the state has not fulfilled their duty to manage these resources that belong to the people of North Carolina. And it's a pretty simple concept, and it's based on the public trust doctrine that says that the resources, the wildlife resources, the natural resources of North Carolina belong to the people of North Carolina as a whole, and not to any individual user group, not commercial fishermen, not recreational fishermen, but everybody. Yep. And that was the whole point of getting the individual citizens on the lawsuit with CCA. This is not a bunch of environmental groups. This is not a bunch of special interest groups. We're highlighting the individuals that are on the suit because they're basically Jane and Joe fishermen. It's a diverse group from around the state. 29 different counties are represented on our lawsuit. There were only 86 individuals in the beginning because we did all that kind of behind the scenes recruiting co-plaintiffs because we didn't want the lawsuit to get out before we actually ready to file it. And even since we've announced the filing of the lawsuit, I've had over 20 people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to be a co-plaintiff as well. Yep. I care about it." And that's what this is about. The state's responsibility to serve as the fiduciary, to manage these resources for the people that own them, and that's the people of North Carolina.
Yeah, I read a book all about that, and meaning just this public domain and how it's being abused in the fishing industry in general, and it's mind-boggling when you think that other industries, like if you were going to go cut down trees, let's just, for instance, right? If you wanted to cut down a bunch of trees to develop something, there's a whole different process, and you're having to pay all these fines and fees. And in the fishing world, it's almost just like it. I know it's regulated, but it's almost not when you compare it to every other industry where you're destroying a natural resource. You didn't get any payout or any good tax break from it. I mean, it's just wild. This could be a whole other podcast episode, but I never really thought about it until I read this book and just saw all the things that are happening in our waterways, both state and federal. I mean, it's crazy, and some of it kind of just. Some of it goes just almost lost until someone like you guys step up to do the right thing. In the book, they talk about, and this is not related to this lawsuit, by the way, but they talk about some areas where, there's just money underneath the table to legislators. And just some dirty stuff out there. And I was just like, it made me sick to my stomach reading it. So I applaud you guys for standing up and doing this, because I know this is not easy, right? This is going to take a lot of time and probably a lot of money as well, but it's doing the right thing. So I want to circle back to number one. So it's destructive gear, shrimp trawling, and then the gill nets. Is there anything else? Like, are those are obviously the two that seem to get brought up the most. Are there any other things out there? Is one worse than the other? I don't really know what's doing the most devastation.
Yeah. There's some other practices that are going on a more minor level, like, for example, oyster dredging. There's a very small handful of people that are still allowed to drag mechanical gear, rakes across the bottom of the sound to harvest oysters. Obviously, that's destroying the oyster reefs, the natural fish habitat, and the natural oyster beds. But that's not the big thing. The big picture is, the continued use of gill nets that other states have either severely restricted to the point where they're not non-existent anymore. They're banned outright, like you mentioned in Florida. Not only does the state know, we know we've identified gill nets as a culprit in the bycatch of untargeted species. They use large mesh gill nets primarily in North Carolina to target flounder. They're also catching red fish, red drum. They're catching stripers in small mesh gill nets. And those are those are stocks that are very important to both recreation and commercial fishermen. And in particular, look at things like striped bass that are all of a sudden we're having a huge problem with the stocks of those. And we know that we're losing a lot of those fish in the nets. So it could be an easy way to sort of take the pressure off of these troubled stocks. But yet the state has always lacked the political will to take that on and do what needs to be done. The same thing with shrimp trawling. The shrimp industry is the number one seafood commodity in North Carolina. It's where all the money is. So there's again the regulatory capture. There's the reluctance of the state to take that industry on, even though we know that they're killing hundreds of millions of fish every year, and they've plowed up those oyster reefs in the Pound of Coast Sound. They've changed the fish structure, fish habitat, the structure in those sounds completely. And again, it goes back to where we used to catch a lot of croaker and weak fish, and now they're just not there anymore. The numbers of fish are not there anymore.
Well, according to your stat, I mean, they're killing 3 times more fish than they are catching shrimp. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, we encourage people to go to the website. You can go to our website. It's pretty simple. It's ccanc.org. And there's a section on there that's got the full complaint. It's got a summary as well, an introductory section. We got some frequently asked questions, and we'll post some more news stories like the press release. But if you read that document, you can't help but be educated and informed about these issues. And anybody that looks at it, I just don't know how you can read that information and look at that data and those statistics and not go away saying, damn, are we really, allowing this? This has been going on for how many years? So people need to be educated on these problems and be able to talk above the rhetoric. Again, commercial industry is going to come out and say this is an attack on us. You're trying to put us out of business. It's not. Our resource is in trouble, and their industry is in trouble, just like recreational fishing is in trouble. If we don't do something about it soon, we're not going to have. We're in danger of losing fish stocks. We had to close harvest on southern flounder in 2019 because of the fisheries managers refused to do what was necessary to end overfishing on those stocks until we got to the point where if we didn't do something drastic like shut down, limit harvest with seasonal closures, we could have lost those fish completely. And when you get to that point where you're having to close fisheries and have moratoriums, you're failing at your job.
And to your point, for the commercial guys who I could understand why they would feel a little bit attacked by it, if you keep going down this path, they're not going to have any job at all in 10 years from now. I mean, or even shorter. I mean, there ain't going to be any fish for anybody, recreational or commercial. So, okay. Wow. So that's number one. Number two is failure of state to end the overfishing, which, kind of ties in with all this. Is there a goal of the lawsuit? Like, is it to kind of put higher limits or more stringent limits, I guess, not higher limits. Is there a certain goal of it? Like that, hey, we only want this many trout and this many redfish, this many flounder to be kept? Or is it just, hey, like you guys just don't make any sense with the current regulations right now?
Right. Yeah, it's the big picture, Joe. I mean, what we're trying to look at is we don't have specific requests in there like that. What we're asking the court to do is agree with us that the state has failed in their fiduciary responsibility to manage these resources for the benefit of the people, and to agree with us that we need a different plan. Most states, when people ask me, where's the change going to come from? Is the court going to, write the changes that need to be done? And no, what we want the court to do is agree with us that we need different laws. We need new updated regulations. And we want this lawsuit to give our legislators the backing that they need to make the decisions that they know need to be done. If you talk to most legislators, they can look at these numbers too. I mean, they're not stupid. They know that there's a problem, but there's always been too much political pushback from a very small segment of the user group. I mean, when you think about North Carolina has close to 11 million citizens, and you've got, I mentioned unused latent commercial fishing licenses. There are currently about 6,500 commercial fishing licenses that are on the books every year, and about 60% of those don't report any landings at all. So you're talking about an industry of about 2,500 or 3,000 people that are controlling our fisheries management policy in a state of 11 million people. I mean, that's just not, it's not right. I mean, they don't own the resources. The people do. And so what we want the lawsuit to do is give, we want the court to agree with us and tell the legislators and tell the executive branch that it's time to do something different. Most states have done this, have had these changes legislatively. Florida is the only one that I can think of that's different, in that you had a referendum on a net ban bill. That's not a public referendum. Is a citizen referendum is not an option in North Carolina, so it's got to come from the legislature. And that's where most states have made the changes that need to be changed,
Yep.
The things that need to be done. And we want that same process to happen in North Carolina.
So talk about the you mentioned it, 60% of commercial fishing fishermen, their licenses, they're reporting 0 catches for the whole year.
Yeah, that's correct. So again, the problem that we see with that is we don't know what impact they're having on the resource. Now we know that we've got some problems with certain species, and when we talked about timely ending of overfishing, we're working right now with southern flounder is a huge one. It's been overfished since we know of since at least 1989. We've had multiple stock assessments done over the years, and nothing was done until 2019 when we had to have seasonal closures to address it. And then you throw in the concern with the stock assessments. If you've got 60% of these commercial fishing license holders that aren't reporting landings, what impact are they having on these stocks? Are they using their licenses at all? Are they using them just for personal consumption, meaning they're just catching commercial limits and keeping it for themselves? Are they selling it off the books? The problem for our fisheries managers is, how do you factor that into your equation when you say, this is our total allowable harvest that we know that the resource can bear, but we don't know what all these people are doing that are holding these licenses. We don't know what impact that's having. It could be in a whole lot worse shape than we even know, and it's in bad shape already.
Well, I mean, this is my opinion, not yours. That seems crazy. I mean, they're talking about the majority of these commercial fishermen. And I've met a lot of commercial fishermen. These guys aren't multimillionaires. They're not just going to waste money renewing their license. And that's crazy that the majority of them reported 0. So what's the fine if they don't do the reporting correctly or at all? Is there much of a penalty, or is there anyone even? Obviously, no one's really monitoring this closely.
No, there's no penalty, and and there's been legislative efforts in the past to change that and say, well, if you're going to have a license, you need to at least have a minimum reporting requirement. You need to be using it. If you're not using it, you don't need to. You need to turn it in.
Wait. So there's no incentive or disincentive to report as a commercial fisherman there.
That's correct. Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so if you just renew it every year and you pay the $400 and you keep your license, then you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's nuts. So yeah, how can you even get close to a good stock assessment if the majority of the people who are individually taking the most fish aren't even reporting any of it? That's wild.
Yeah. It's an issue that we've tried to get the state to deal with, but at this, up to this point, they've not had the political will to do what needs to be done.
So I don't know the answer to this one. Fisheries management in your state, who elects these people? Are they voted in? How do you even get on the board? How many people are there?
So our fishery division of marine fisheries is under the executive branch, under the governor, and so you have a secretary of the Department of Environmental Quality, which is basically over fisheries, is a division of the department, and you have staff that runs the division of marine fisheries, and then we have a Marine Fisheries Commission that's a 9-person appointed body they're all appointed by the governor. And the problem with that board is that it's set up for conflict, and it's basically, it's set up almost for failure, because you have 3 seats out of the 9 are set aside for recreational fishermen. You're either 2 recreational fishermen, 1 person from the industry, and then you have 3 people that are commercial fishermen or from the commercial industry. So you got, those 3, button heads on issues right off the bat. And then you have 1 scientist and 2 at-large seats that are kind of your swing votes. So you're always going to have conflict on it. But, the problem we've always had is that the commission is a what we call a vested commission, meaning that everybody on the board, or the majority of the people on the board, have some sort of financial interest in the resource that they're trying to manage.
What do you mean? Like, give me an example.
Well, like, the commercial fishing industry, if if they're up there and they're charged with saying, well, we need to cut southern flounder harvest by 72%. Well, they know that that's going to adversely affect their industry. So they're not likely to vote for what's best for the resource. They're thinking financial impact instead of what's the impact on the resource. Yep. So that's a big problem when you have people managing. Again, they have 3 votes out of 9 on a commission, but yet they only represent less than 1% of the population of North Carolina. So the overwhelming majority of the people of North Carolina that own the resource are underrepresented on the commission that's trying to decide what should be done with the resources they own.
And what about the other 6 people? And I know a couple of them you said are at large. What's their incentive either way?
Well, they're political appointees. So you've got 3 of them are either 2 of them are recreational fishermen. 1 is from the recreational industry. So there's some interest there in financial incentive for at least the person that represents the industry. There's a science seat, and there's 2 at-large seats. And again, they're all political appointees, so it depends on who the governor is making the appointments and what direction he's giving to his appointees. So we're, again, we need leadership at the top to say, hey, we recognize that these are problems, and there's been some recognition within the current administration and within the current legislature. That there's some things that need to be changed, but there's just not enough leadership. There's not enough political will to take on these big picture issues and do what's right.
Yeah, because you would think, especially even if there's just one voice from a real scientist who's looking at real stats, right? And I mean, it's just mind-boggling that can go on for that long without any change. These numbers you're quoting, it's from them, right? This is not some third-party consultant that you guys hire. This is their own numbers. Like, they have to be looking at this saying, all right, guys, maybe we should lay off the pedal for a little bit. We're killing all of our fish.
I finally saw that from the Division of Marine Fisheries scientists in 2018, 2019 for the first time. Like I mentioned, southern flounder, that's the poster child of mismanagement in North Carolina. And so we've known, like I said, since at least 1989. And then we had a Fisheries Reform Act came into play in 1997, when we first started. The mandate was to have fisheries management plans for all our imported species. And so the first stock assessment that was done for southern flounder found that it was overfished. So this is going back to 2004, 2005. But yet the commission and the division didn't do what was necessary to reverse that trend. Instead, they waited for the next stock assessment. which in 2009, 2014, 2017, all the stock assessments said the same thing, that it's overfished and overfishing is occurring. Well, finally, I followed this process pretty closely through all these amendments, and you go to these meetings, and it's crazy how many people will come to these meetings and try to argue against the science and say, especially from commercial fishing interests, they'll say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm on the water every day. You just don't know where the fish are. You don't know how to catch fish. And they would argue the science for years, for decades now. And finally, in 2018 and going into 2019, I saw the fisheries biologist go to a meeting and say, we're way past arguing about the science. We're about to lose this stock. We're not talking about 10 years from now. We're talking about 2 or 3 years from now. We could see this stock completely collapse like we saw river herring. River herring in North Carolina was the same story. It was mismanaged for decades until finally collapsed in 2005, I believe it was, and we've had a complete moratorium on the harvest of river herring since then. So, the fisheries biologists, I think, are finally willing to stand up and say, you're in trouble here. We got to make some hard decisions, but we got to get some new legislation in place. We got to get some laws changed to give them the ability to manage the fish species like they need to.
How's the herring doing, by the way?
It's from what I'm told by the biologists, that it will never recover in our lifetime to the point where we will see a sustainable harvest on river herring in North Carolina again. Not in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. I think it's recovering, obviously, because nobody's harvesting any of them, but we're still well below the spawning stock biomass that the biologists look for a sustainable fishery.
Got it. And also, too, I want to clarify, when you say overfishing, let's just take the flounder. This is overfishing in general. It's not just pointing a finger at commercial guys. I know they take heat, but it's recreational too, right? It was just is that true or not? I mean, it was just overfishing, like all of the laws they put in place and all the limits were just off. Is that? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it means we're taking more fish out by harvest, whether it be recreational or commercial or dead discards. We're taking out more fish than the stock can bear to reproduce itself. And what they found with southern flounder is you can see this. We're in a lot of these stocks. We're seeing age truncation. Where we're seeing smaller and smaller fish, and that's where what started to really set off the alarm bells with the fisheries biologists on southern flounders. That all of a sudden we're fishing on 1 and 2 year old fish that haven't had a chance to spawn even one time. So it's kind of like being, an egg farmer and killing all the chickens. If your brood stock doesn't have a chance to reproduce, then, eventually you're not going to have any more. And it's why we've done, we've seen, one of the successes that we've seen is a federal, Atlantic States Marine Fisheries managed species like red drum that has a slot limit. And we're allowing the larger fish, the big spawning fish, to survive, and we're allowing the smaller fish, to grow up before we kill them all. So we're creating more adults. What we're seeing in North Carolina with flounder and striped bass is this age truncation, where we're not seeing any older fish anymore. The older fish just aren't there because we're now fishing on a smaller stock. So you're going to be targeting those younger fish.
Crazy stuff, my friend. What's the next step? Obviously, it's been filed now. Where does it play out? And I'm interested in these meetings too. You mentioned, a meeting where the public is invited. How often do those happen?
Well, the state continues the fisheries management review plan. They've got a schedule where every year they're working on updating fisheries management plans for certain species, and they'll have public scoping meetings where they allow the public an opportunity to comment and follow the process. There is a Marine Fisheries Commission meeting, a quarterly meeting, Thursday, tomorrow, and half day Friday. Everything's still in webinar meetings in North Carolina at this point. Everything's done over the internet. But as far as next steps for us, the state by law has 30 days to respond to our complaint. As I understand it, there's an automatic, if they ask for it, there's usually an automatic 30-day extension on that. We can expect, and they probably will do that, particularly as we get into the holidays. So once they respond, either they'll come back and respond to the complaint, which is what we would like for them to do so we can have a dialogue about these issues, or they can seek a motion to dismiss and try to just get out of the lawsuit without having to deal with it. That, to me, would be regrettable. Certainly something we're prepared for, that if the state wants to take that route, our lawyers are pretty confident we can overcome that. So we're at least 60 days out before we get a response from the state. Probably would be summertime before we actually have a hearing, whether that be on the complaint itself or whether that's on the motion to dismiss. So the wheels of justice grind pretty slow. So it's not going to be an overnight fix. We didn't ask for an injunction. We're not, like you said, we're not trying to shut down fishing. But we want our day in court. We want these issues to be brought to light. We want people to be educated and informed, and get involved and be a part of the process.
Yep, I think that's so important. To your point, go just read the lawsuit. You can learn so much about what's at stake, what the real issues are, and in the stats too. To your point, it's kind of tough to argue with science, especially their own numbers. I mean, it when you start seeing stuff down by 90 something, especially 97% down, man, that should be like red flags waving, alarm bells going off. So, I'm excited to see where it goes. We'll be kind of sitting here on the sidelines. How else can we all help? Obviously, I'm here in Florida. What are you guys looking for help from any anglers or anyone who just loves the state of North Carolina or fisheries in general? I want to make sure our kids and grandkids have the same opportunities to fish that we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main thing, like I said, the main thing people can do is be educated and be informed. Be an intelligent advocate for the resource. Let's not talk about, let's get beyond the rhetoric and let's talk about, what the real issues are and what needs to be done. And once you become educated and informed, we want people to be able to talk to their elected officials. This is an opportunity to start putting pressure on them to say, hey, this has gotten so bad that we've had to file a lawsuit to get your attention. These issues are important to me as a recreational angler, as a citizen of North Carolina, or just as a person who cares about conservation. Lean on your legislators and your elected officials and let them know that you want to see change. Like you said, this is about having some resources available for our kids, and grandkids to enjoy. I tell people, real quickly, public trust doctrine goes beyond identifying these as trust assets that belong to the citizens of North Carolina. It also says that the state has a fiduciary responsibility to manage those assets without damage and destruction. It's the same thing with your retirement account. You're hoping to put away some money for your future, for your kids' future. You want them to have something. And that's the responsibility of our state and our resources at this point. The second thing people can do is, if you want to donate, you can do that on the website as well. We're raising money to pay for this lawsuit and keep it going. We're in good shape. We've had a lot of good support. So we want to keep that going, though. We know it's a long process, and we've got a great legal team. And then, if you're interested in getting off the sidelines and stop being an armchair quarterback, join CCA. You can do that again on our website. It's just ccanc.org. All this information is available there, and just encourage you to get involved and stay informed.
So I'm a member of CCA Florida. We have broken out by chapters and by county. Can you join multiple CCAs? Could someone in Florida? I assume the answer is yes, but I don't know.
Yeah, you can. And what's interesting, the only person I've ever run into, and I could be, like I said, the only person I know that's a life member of CCA in 3 different states is Jake Jordan. I don't know if you know Captain Jake Jordan from up here in North Carolina, but
yeah, another name, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, he's a world-renowned fly fisherman, famous tarpon fisherman. I think he first joined in Florida. And he told me this story. I can't remember who it was. Talked him into being a life member in Florida, and then he got. It might have been. Then somebody talked him into joining, being a life member in Texas, and now he's a life member in North Carolina as well. So he's the only person I know that's a life member in 3 different states. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
It can be done.
Yeah. Too cool. Well, David, I appreciate all the time here. It's super helpful. It clarifies a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. And I might have to join North Carolina CCA to help support you guys. So we'll put links. I know we have people that listen to this on Spotify and iTunes and in YouTube as well. We'll put links to everything. If you can, please repeat your website where everyone can go learn a little bit more about all this.
Yeah, sure. It's CCANC.org.
CCANC.org. Cool. And we'll put that at the show notes at saltstrong.com/podcast. And we'll also have a whole blog post on this, and we'll put links to everything if you're watching this on our website, like I know a lot of you do. And then also at the bottom of both YouTube and on iTunes and on the blog, we have an area where you can type in questions. The best place is on our blog because that comes right to us and we get to those the quickest. But we love any of y'all feedback. And I'll make sure if it's a specific question for David, I'll forward it on to him via email where he can answer it. So if you have any questions or concerns or need clarification on this, first and foremost, go to ccanc.org. It's pretty well laid out over here. You can read everything there on the press release. And there's even, I believe, a couple of people to contact if you have their questions. Otherwise, ask it. We'd love to answer it any way we can and be of help. This has been a fun one, a very interesting one, and we will definitely be rooting for you. I think any recreational angler and even the commercial guys who want to have a job in 10, 15 years from now in your state. I think yes, it's going to be painful for probably everyone, I'm guessing, for a short amount of time. But it, as you said, I mean, part of what you're trying to do now is really make an impact, a long lasting one, and something that's going to impact hopefully many future generations. So kudos to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Joe. Like I said, there will be a little bit of short-term pain for some long-term gain, but again, it's like investing for your future.
Yep.
If you do it when you're young, you take care of those resources when you're young, you won't have as much of a struggle as you get older. Unfortunately, we put it off to the last minute, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions, but we got to do something to save this resource.
Yep. Excellent. Guys, we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you on the next episode. We're out. 'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.